Woman loses her forehead in a car accident and warns people not to do what she did. In December 2006, a 22-year-old Irish woman, Grain Keeley, lost her forehead and broke every bone in her face when the Jeep she was traveling in skid on black ice and hit a wall. Although the collision was serious, it was the position that Grain was sitting in that left the young woman with the most horrific head injury. Grain Keeley was a passenger in her then-boyfriend's SUV when they were on a 3-hour drive from Galway, Ireland to her hometown for Christmas. The cold December temperatures caused the roads to freeze, creating a dangerous layer of black ice that is completely invisible to drivers. Driving in a 50 miles per hour zone, Grain's boyfriend was overtaking another car when he hit a patch of black ice, and their SUV collided with a wall at a speed of only 37 miles per hour. The speed of the Jeep wasn't the cause of the woman's severe head injury, but instead it was the way she was sitting. Keeley did not anticipate how dangerous the position she was sitting in was until it was too late. The scary fact is, many people relax in this exact same comfy position when traveling as a passenger, oblivious to the serious risks it has. The 22-year-old was sitting in the passenger seat of her boyfriend's 4x4 with her feet resting on the dashboard during their long journey home. When they skidded on ice and hit a wall at 37 miles per hour, the airbag underneath Grain's feet deployed at a rapid speed of 200 miles per hour. As Grain's legs were stretched out across the dashboard, the blow of the airbag forced her knees into her face at 200 miles per hour. Grain recalls how, "Normally I wouldn't have had my feet up, but I just bought new Uggs and the soles were completely clean." Keeley asserts the importance of sitting safely in a car when she thinks of how her then-boyfriend broke only his nose while she had broken every bone in her face. "My ex broke his nose in the accident, I broke my face." It puts it in perspective. Grain was rushed to hospital where she was kept on a ventilator for 5 days with no recollection of the accident. She remembers waking up and thinking it was September, but recalls the nurse saying, "It's the month where the man in the red suit comes," but it just did not click with her who Santa Claus was. A week following the accident, the 22-year-old woke up confused and in a state of shock. When she looked in the mirror she jumped back, thinking someone was standing behind her, but the truth was she didn't recognize herself. "I remember looking in the mirror for the first time, and it was horrific." When she finally came round after the accident, Grain had lost a great deal of her memory. Still to this day she does not recall certain months surrounding that fateful evening. "I have no memory of the accident, the 3 months leading up to it or the month following it." After spending time on a ventilator in one hospital, Keeley was transferred to Galway University Hospital to undergo treatment for her injuries, where she was informed by the doctors that she had broken every bone in her face and lost 2 teeth. Her knees had pushed all her facial bones inwards and upwards, and she would need extensive treatment to fix this. But this would only be the beginning of Grain's suffering. Keeley was then admitted to Beaumont Hospital, Dublin, Ireland for a CAT scan that showed she had a cerebral spinal fluid leak from her brain. "It was there that I had my big operation that lasted over 10 hours. It involved 3 teams of surgeons putting my face back together with metal sheets and bolts." After her 10.5-hour reconstructive surgery, Keeley was discharged from the hospital soon after her surgery to reduce the risk of her contracting infections that are common in hospitals. However, she was about to learn that her suffering was going to get a whole lot worse as she found everything so hard to do. Although the surgery was relatively successful, Grain was back in hospital the following year where she was diagnosed with the deadly bacteria infection, MRSA. The infection was in her forehead bone, which meant she needed to have her forehead removed. MRSA infections are common among people with poor immune systems and are known to infect areas of the body that have undergone surgeries. The infection is most common among those who spend a lot of time in hospitals, therefore it was a risk that Grain was exposed to. As a result of contracting MRSA in her forehead, Grain had to have her forehead bone removed, and she would live without a replacement for 2 years. "I looked quite strange. Thinking back on it now, I don't know how I did it, I just did. I got a lot of strange looks which I completely understood," she recalls. It took 2 years for surgeons to design Grain's forehead specifically for her. Originally it was meant to be titanium, but then one of the neurosurgeons came up with ceramic. This was made in Italy, and it was specifically made to fit my head. As a result of her destructive facial injuries, a brain leakage, and a deadly infection in her forehead, Grain suffers from acquired brain injury, ABI, which causes her to feel exhausted and distracted. She still has annual visits to her neurosurgeon and her ENT surgeon. Most of us are guilty of sitting like Grain did, with our feet on the dashboard when we feel like stretching out and relaxing. But the young woman's story really makes you stop and think, how did I never consider this as a hazard? Keely admits, I know people are going to think I'm silly for having my feet up there. I think it myself. But it actually scares me how many people don't realize how dangerous it can be. 13 years later, Grain still suffers from the effects of her traumatic head injury. In an interview this year she explained, my last procedure was a couple of months ago, so I'm still having procedures done this many years later. The only thing I can say to everybody is be careful, it's not worth the risk. Keep your feet on the floor front and back passengers. Since sharing her story with the world, Grain has noticed a large amount of celebrities posting photos of themselves resting their feet on the dashboard with zero knowledge of the danger they're putting themselves in. Keely has been persistent in her effort to warn people about the dangers of having your legs up on the dashboard and is concerned for the amount of celebrities publicizing it. In a Facebook post she wrote, I see passengers with their feet on the dashboard and it breaks my heart. I'm hoping you will pass on this message/warning to everyone you know and hopefully people will understand how dangerous it is. Today, Grain Keely conducts talks with teenagers in schools around Ireland on road safety awareness while highlighting the importance of sitting safely in a vehicle. In a recent interview Keely said, I thought having a seat belt on was enough. My ex was a careful driver so I never thought anything would happen. In December 2019, in her outstanding effort to promote road safety, the 35-year-old won 2 highly esteemed awards for her work with young Irish people on the importance of road safety. At an awards ceremony in Dublin, Ireland, she was named Road Safety Champion and also received a Supreme Award in road safety. Grain Keely's story of courage and diligence has been shared wide across Europe, Australia, Asia, and the US in an effort to highlight the dangers of resting your legs on the dashboard of a vehicle and reminding people to keep their feet down.